Hey everyone, and welcome to our live weekly show. My name is Jackie Rogers, and I'm from the American Society of Positive Care for Children. And today I am so excited to introduce you to one of my very good friends, Ms. Jasmin Ramirez. Jasmin is a teacher by trade, a wife and a mom who's also figuring out how to care for her family and community in this COVID world. Jasmin is the program coordinator at Voces, Unidos, a nonprofit serving Latino families and raising awareness about civic issues. She also serves as the board director for the Roaring Fork School District. Jasmin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Jackie, for having me.
Of course. Any excuse I could get to get you on. I've actually known Jasmin since we were in school, so this is a special treat.
Yeah, we're both graduates from the district that I am now one of 5 female board members on, and we're only one of 2 in the state of Colorado to be all females. So it's pretty cool.
You are pretty cool.
So,
tell us more about Voces Unidos. What are some of the issues your organization helps with?
Yeah, so Voces Unidas was created 5 months ago. We just turned 5 months old. We were created really right around when COVID hit, out of necessity for our community. We're the first Latino-created, Latino-led nonprofit in our valley. And so, you know, our 3 pillars are civic engagement, advocacy, and leadership. I lead the leadership program, but we're working really hard right now to get people registered to vote. Our focus is obviously on the Latino community. We want to make sure that the Tri-County area that we're serving, which is Pickens County, Eagle County, and Garfield County, where I reside, that we're just, you know, organizing our Latino families to get involved and be active. And also to have a voice at decision-making tables where we belong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I know you mentioned that your organization happened, you know, out of necessity because of COVID. Can you tell us a bit about the impact the families and communities you serve have felt and what they're kind of dealing with?
Yeah, so right from the very beginning, you know, I think COVID obviously only further highlighted the extreme inequities that we are suffering from here in this valley and in rural communities in our state. And so we definitely had a lot of issues from the get-go about how do we quarantine and still have income to sustain our families. In our county, the county in which my family and I reside in, Garfield, we're 30% of the population per the 2010 census, and yet we're 75% of the COVID cases. And so, you know, we are battling housing, healthcare, resources to sustain our families, and all of these issues that really come down to leadership. You know, if you have leadership that is representative of all, then they're going to invite you to these tables where they're making these decisions for your community. And so we've been working really hard to get our Latino community organized and to be involved in this process, because we live here, we pay taxes, we're residents, and we need to have a voice when we're making decisions, especially when they pertain to our community. We definitely also have a lot of employment issues and concerns and questions that are arising out of COVID. COVID is still here in our community. It's a Latino resident is 5.3 times more likely to test positive for COVID in our community. And so we're definitely trying to not only bring light to all these concerns and issues, but put forth leaders that are going to be able to advocate for our community at those tables where decisions are being made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's so important to be able to not just voice for your communities, but like for your families. You know, it's not just like it's a ripple effect, right? So when you see it in one place, you see it everywhere. So you're even seeing it, you know, maybe in the schools.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Becky. Yeah, I was going to say definitely. Of course, you know, out here in rural Colorado, broadband is a huge issue. And so when you have an influx of families that first of all, didn't have Wi-Fi before COVID, right? Pre-COVID. And now they have to learn this new system of learning, and they're becoming teachers at home, and they need to have jobs to be able to live here and afford to live here. I mean, this has really impacted our community in so many ways, and especially our children in our valleys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I know you've been advocating for the Latino community for like, I feel like it's been at least like 15 years since I've known you. Can you tell us a little bit of, can you tell us what some of the biggest challenges you see Latino families are facing, particularly pertaining to this school year?
Yeah, so this school year is hard for all of us. I think whether we live in a state where, like ours in Colorado, where the governor has issued a mask order, or you live in a state, like California or Georgia, all of these states have very different responses to COVID right now. But I think one thing that has been especially difficult is that parents have taken on that aspect of teaching. And so we've become teachers in our homes. The working mom has had a special difficulty because we've had to adjust our schedules. Our children are really, really important to us. And we value their education, but we also, we're working moms. We need to work, and we have professions, and we've worked hard for the places where we get to lead from. And so I think that balance has been really hard for our families. In the Latino community, there's data that shows that it's a lot harder for a Latino family to work from home, or to be able to work from home, because they work in a lot of these service industries like hospitality, construction, housekeeping, restaurants. And so I think, there's that balance of like, how do I help my child thrive in an online learning world, when I need to thrive at work to make any income whatsoever, because we had a stay at home order. And how do I not get sick? Because, I also am going to be in contact with a lot of people, and how do I not get my family sick? And how do I not get sick? And do I have health care? Does my employer provide that? And if my children do get sick, what am I going to do? Because I still need to work. I mean, there's just so many things that have come up, and not just to online learning, but even childcare. My toddler, she's 2 years old. It is way too expensive to send her to any location that can take care of her. And so, my family had to make that decision to say, one of us has to stay home, and how can we adjust our schedules? And I think a lot of American families, and a lot of families in the United States right now, are really battling these issues of how do we provide for our children and for our household, and still be that teacher that our child needs, and the support they need as we try to thrive in this world of online learning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's so hard. I think, like you said, it's a balancing act, right? Because now we have to be the teacher, we have to be the parent, we have to be the worker, we have to be the nurse, we have to be the cook. And it's a lot of things to balance. And I feel like right now we're all just doing the best that we can. So I don't know. I feel like it's going to be a lot of trial and error until we can get it right, but maybe we're moving in the right direction. I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, I definitely think it has caused us to have more mental health discussions, not just as working parents or as parents in general, but also for the kids, right? I mean, we see it in our children. They're not socializing, and we see that mental health is an issue that we don't talk about enough, especially in communities like the Latino community. And so I think really emphasizing that we need to not only be aware of signs of depression and anxiety and suicide, but we also really need to be aware that we're creating spaces for us to be able to have these conversations with our children and with our partners.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's really important to point out too, like just having the conversations with your kids about like, what's going on, not just with you, but like what's going on in their world, because they're obviously feeling all of these things too. They're also trying to navigate all this. I have this one image of my son over when pandemic just started, and he really wanted to go ride his bike with a friend. And I told him no. And he just had like the biggest meltdown. And he was so sad and started crying, like, I just want to see my friends. I just want to see my friends. And like, as a mom, it's really heartbreaking to hear, you know, like he's 6 years old. He just wants to play with his neighbors. He just wants to go to school. He just wants to do all these things. He just wants to see his parents happy, you know? So it's a lot of really big things that our kids are having to deal with too. So, sorry, that was my tangent.
It's fine.
But
it's very relatable.
Yeah, everybody's kind of dealing with it now in their own way. So I don't know. I hope that change can happen, but as you and I both know, like change doesn't happen unless you use your voice. And really, the change is going to start with our kids. You know, a better future starts with the kids. I'm just going to ask you one more question, and then I'll let you go. But this year's, like we just said, it's been especially challenging for all kinds of families for all kinds of reasons. I'd like to hear from you, like what your hope is for the end of 2020. Like, what advice can you give families who are watching right now?
Yeah, that's a hard one. I think we don't really, there's so much unknowns right now, right? I think like you mentioned before, like our voice is really instrumental and our children are the future. So we need to be very conscious about, what are we doing as parents to activate ourselves and organize ourselves and really voice our opinions and our thoughts on issues that affect their changing world. This isn't the America that we grew up in. And I know you and I have had conversations about that. It's a very different upbringing. It's a very different world. I mean, technology, I think Facebook had just launched like 2 years before we graduated.
That's actual. Don't date us like that.
So, I do think, the kids are growing up in a world that we didn't have, when we were growing up. And so, I think we are children's best advocates, and we really need to be present at the tables that are making decisions about their future and also voice our opinion to those tables. One of the privileges that we have is to be able to vote. And so we need to get registered and we need to make sure that we are getting involved and that we're voting on November 3rd and making sure that, we are the voice that directs where the nation will be headed and the future of our children will be headed. I definitely think we need to continue to just have grace for each other as working moms, as working parents, as the online teachers for our children, have grace for ourselves and each other, and then just be kind. I mean, we see this whole new world on Facebook every day. And I think we definitely need to be very conscious of our mental health as parents and what we are being involved in and whatnot, and what we decide to engage with on Facebook. I think it's also our mental health. Like, we need to be really accountable to ourselves on what we are intaking and also, what we're putting out in the world, because our children are learning from us, their primary teachers at home, and, they're following in our footsteps, and so we definitely need to make sure we're aware of how we are projecting ourselves with them and just, continue to, have hope. There's just so much unknowns, but I definitely think just really getting involved in our communities and our community issues and the nonprofits that are serving our community, trying to engage, get involved in those communities. That's the only way we're going to create a community that we want our kids to not only live in, but thrive in. So I encourage all of you guys to get registered today.
Yeah, beautifully said. Jasmin, thank you so much for coming on today and talking with us and catching up. If any of you would like to connect with Jasmin, you can check out their website at vocesunidos.org, or you can follow them on Facebook, and I'll be dropping the links in the comments. And for anybody who is watching this live or listening to the recording, just thank you so much for participating in this important conversation. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Bye.
Thank you.